what got me thinking about this was, okay, who are we as academics in a university these days, trying to reach people half, or in my case, maybe 1/3 our age. And ultimately, it's not the textbook that gets their attention. It's not necessarily the information that gets students' attention. It's not our PhDs or our research that gets their attention. It's whether we are seen as an authority in their mind, okay? And so what they term to be an authority, I'll catch on later on in this discussion, but I want the viewers of this video to start thinking about that. It's more, you know, we're going above teaching, research, engagement, and we're trying to become that authority in the student's mind. So like a thought leader. And this is much more than just being a PhD academic and publishing top tier articles. So let's just get into this. This is my initial thinking about this. And so for someone who's not been really, or haven't had time, like, you know, maybe on Facebook because of family reasons, but why would I want to get involved in LinkedIn? Like it's B2B, it's kind of more professional. The university doesn't require it, so why should I do it? But let's get into baby steps and thinking about why and where, how should we start on this whole engagement thing? Because I will talk about LinkedIn, then I'll talk about media interviews very, very briefly, and then finally bringing it back together, integrating teaching and research, coming back to that theme I've mentioned right at the start. It's about developing your aura of authority in the minds of your students. So, you know, when patients go to the hospital, they see the doctors as authority because immediately they know that the doctors can fix their sickness. Students don't always know there is sickness, so it's even much more difficult for business school teachers to convince students that they are the authority and what they're teaching them they really need to know and that it is good for them. Okay, so I'm going to cover these 4 areas very, very quickly, and I've made it such very, very close to people's early beginnings in industry engagement. Related to this, being an authority figure, COVID-19 has created a new teaching, research, engagement opportunities. Everyone is talking about, oh, what's going to happen post-COVID-19, right? And unfortunately, you've got the big 4 consulting firms out there prancing around saying, well, okay, this is what's going to happen post-COVID. And I'm thinking, why can't academics be doing that? Why can't we start to be the ones with speaking out there in our particular discipline areas and just guiding the world, the business world, in terms of, okay, this is what you need to focus on in 2021, 2022, and so forth. It doesn't always have to be the consulting firms, the big 4 firms that do this for us. And, you know, if we believe that this is an ideal for academics to take this role, then the question is, to academics, are you ready with talking points when the media knocks on your door to interview you about the future? Are you what would you say if you were not, if the media knocked on your door today to ask you about the future in your niche? Do you have anything to say? Do you have talking points? And that's a challenge. That's a challenge for everyone, I think, in academia, that that in my view. Okay. This was only posted by McKinsey in the last couple of weeks. And, you know, they're talking about the new reality. What is the new reality? Digital speed, ready to reinvent, customer followers, all in data-driven decisions. Look, I'm not going to repeat what they're saying, but McKinsey are out there talking about all this. Why aren't we out there with talking points about the future? Okay, Neil, stop telling us about this. I haven't even gotten into LinkedIn and got my profile going. And now you're saying we need to compete with McKinsey. No, no, no. Okay. You know, in 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years time, this is where you can end up and being the authority figure where you are out there rather than McKinsey or the big four telling the world, you know, here are the big 5 areas that you need to focus on in the next 3 years, for example. Okay. So baby steps, why, where, and how to start. What are the motivations for getting an industry engagement? Well, the first motivation may be consulting and make big money. Money, money, money. Takes time, long term. Need to go all in to be successful and effective though. Second, what's the second motivation? KPIs. Oh, the university has KPIs for engagement, then I must do it. I tell you, the industry will see through academic scams or their BS if they're just doing it for KPIs. KPIs is, in my view, not the best motivator for why you should do industry engagement. Ultimately, it is the doctor analogy, all right? It's the patients, it's the students. Without patients, there is no doctor. Without students, there is no teacher. You are not seen as a gatekeeper. Rather, you're viewed as a teacher, a mentor. You're an authority, you're an expert. You want to gain respect from students. Ultimately, that's what I believe is the real motivation for why you should do industry engagement, and not for the top 2 reasons. The top 2 reasons I'll push you along, but you'll run out of steam. I think the last reason is sustainable in the long run. So that begs the question, well, what do I want to be an authority on? You know, what's my niche? Well, here are the questions. What are you curious about? What is your favorite topic? If you had to watch a 30-minute how-to video, what topic would that be? Okay, so just because I'm a discipline head, accounting and finance, I'm professor of accounting, but I'm very, very curious about supply chain. So, you know, it doesn't mean I can't apply accounting to supply chains. It doesn't mean I can't apply operations management techniques, which is basically management accounting, to supply chains. That's my industry engagement niche that I am exploiting. And so that's the question I have for you, the viewers of this video. You know, what are you curious about? What is your curiosity? Because it's your curiosity that will spark the interest of people in industry that you are trying to reach. They're not interested in your PhD, whether you're a professor or you publish papers. I remember when I was asked to present to Global Sources, and they said, oh, could we use the company that you're a director of? We don't want to use the university you're involved with. And I said, why? Oh, because you'll get more audience that way. You know, we know this. It's quite obvious, right? You know, this is going back many, many years. And so there's a lot of skepticism in industry about what value academics can give to them. And so this is why we need to go back to basic steps and thinking about, well, if I'm going to be an authority in one area, it shouldn't be motivated by KPIs or my PhD. It should be motivated by what I'm really, really, really curious about. Wow. Okay, so an example is, once you've chosen your niche, you can think about at the profession level, at the industry level, association level, regulatory bodies. There's all these different areas. I started off in the accounting profession where I went to CPA Australia in Hong Kong and said, can I do a presentation for them on management accounting? I didn't call it management accounting. I called it the balanced scorecard. And to make it pliable to the people that would turn up, and ended up, luckily, people did turn up, and it wasn't a flop. And it wasn't until 2010 that I started, you know, going directly to industry. And I did that through my China 1000 project, where I did pilot studies of industry groups. And then instead of presenting a working paper to academia, I got a bunch of data, and then I went back to industry and presented to an association and got feedback from them. I first went to industry, not to academia, to try and make sense of what I'm learning here. And then backwards and forwards, and you know, the American Chamber of Commerce, the British Chamber of Commerce, I presented to all of them even before I did my first academic presentation on this project. And so they were associations that you can go to. I remember signing up, trying to present in Singapore in 2013 when I moved to Singapore in 2012, and they said, oh, we don't normally get academics to present to the American Chamber. And I said, well, trust me, I've got something to present. And then they said, well, send us your slides. And I said, all right, I sent a slide deck, 35 slides. And they said, okay, you've got 25-minute max for that 1 hour session. I said, okay, don't worry. I ended up going for 40 minutes and the questions that went over time, and they said, wow, I've never seen an academic present like you, O'Connor. But, but that's 2013. How can I do that? Because, well, I started 9 years before. Okay, so baby steps. I don't expect you can walk into an industry association and start to do what I did, the American Chamber of Commerce, 2013. Okay, you get baby steps. I would start with your professional association where you do a workshop for your own profession. So it's much more of a technical workshop. You don't have to know everything about industry, and you just focus on the technical specifics of what you are teaching. Or if maybe it's to do with IT, then you're teaching something about data analytics or computer analytics. Maybe it's not application to workplace, but just in coding or that area. So you can be very, very technical when you're talking to the profession. But once you go to industry and associations, then they're expecting more of you in a shorter period of time. Okay. So using social media, where can you start with LinkedIn? Well, set up your account to be of service, not to be of your bureaucratic designation of who you are. So I see so many people, they say, oh, I'm a professor of accounting, I'm a professor of the supply chain. And look, I say here, I'm a professor, but very, very important, what I'm saying is that I'm an advisor to China and IoT supply chains, global supply chain trainer. So when people see my site, then they know the expertise that I can give to them, even though I say I'm an FCPA. My niche is in the supply chain. Maybe it's accounting applied to supply chain, but that's my niche. That's how I can help people. And that's what I'm trying to teach people when they set up their LinkedIn. You've got the link, your LinkedIn byline needs to speak to readers about how you can help them. Nothing to do with your designated bureaucratic designation that you have. We all have them. There are our identities that we go through life with, but they don't necessarily convey value to readers of your LinkedIn profile. Okay. Think about who your influencers are in your area. Follow them. Okay. Jab, 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 right hook. What I'm going to do now, just spend the next 5 minutes to talk about two big techniques that were coined by Gary Vaynerchuk. He is a media icon in New York. He's got his own media company, VaynerMedia, with nearly 1,000 employees, offices all around the world, started from basically next to nothing over 10 years ago. Anyway, he talks about this notion of jab, jab, jab. That means you've got to keep giving, 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 giving until you've got no energy left. And then when you need something, you go in for the ask, and that's the right hook. And that's the boxing analogy I want to take you through now. So applied to LinkedIn, you need to give, give, give. How can you give, give, give in LinkedIn? Okay, it's not you spend all your research time on LinkedIn, but you can just spend as little as 15, 20 minutes a day in commenting, posting a reference on someone, or even writing a short article, or posting a summary of a lecture you gave this week with a photo of the PowerPoint slide. You take a photo of your PowerPoint slide, you post that and say, happy to share the key points of this topic, which would be very, very of interest to a particular industry segment. And then you just leave it at that. You don't need to post a video or anything like that. Or you can go one step further and make a top 10 list in your area. What are the top 10 challenges in applying IT in the banking industry? What are the top 10 challenges in the supply chain, like what I do here? Ultimately, you can think your ultimate give is like being a connector. That's the ultimate give. It's like referring a client. Someone comes to you, they DM you. That's what they call it in LinkedIn. That means they direct message you for advice. Can you help me with 1, 2, 3? Maybe you can help them with 1 and 2, but you can't help them with 3. So you DM them back. Oh, here's, please email me. Okay, here's some advice I can give, but at the same time, I'd like to refer you to a connection of mine who I think can really, really help you go to the next step. And that's a give that you're giving. You're giving advice, but also you're completing, you're closing the loop in trying to help someone. And that's the great thing about LinkedIn. It's not like you have to be able to tell everything and give all of the advice that people are looking for. Connecting people with people that are an authority is also a way of giving. Okay, so here's an example of how I've been giving just in the last 6 months. Like in ready for a media interview I did in April, I created this diagram because I'm very diagrammatic in my thinking. If I can map it out in a diagram, then I can talk for hours going from part to part in that diagram. That's what I did. And so I posted that to LinkedIn. I said, oh, and, you know, trying to, and in a very humble way in LinkedIn, saying, trying to consolidate all of my reading and experience on the effects of the trade war and Corona-19 on the global supply chain. So I preface that comment with saying, I'm trying to consolidate all of my thoughts. In other words, I'm not putting myself out there as saying, look, I know everything. All right. So, you know, there's ways of being humble in social media. It's not like I'm the expert and I know everything. And so that was the first step. And then a few days later, I digitalized it. If you go to the far left, you can see that I made it into a nice diagram. And then I'd be more specific in how the value I'm giving to my community. I say I take the massive information and factors that impact business and supply chains and boil them down into visual displays like this. And then I give a summary, bang, all I've done. And then a few days later, I updated it, my updated diagram, the effects of the trade war. Like in social media, sometimes you have to post things 2, 3, 4 times. What I've done is delicately posted the same thing, but there are upgrades each time. And so it gets views of people that didn't view the first posting or the second posting. Like these are little tricks of the trade in social media. Or here's an example on the far right of an example of a diagram where I just posted, you know, the different segments or operations of VCs across Southeast Asia in different areas of fintech ecosystem. And you know, but it's always important to preface that with some key takeaways that, okay, I'm looking at this diagram, what are my takeaways? And so you've got a bit of text and then you've got a diagram. And so these are ways in which you can upgrade the way that you give in social media beyond just making some comments or liking someone and so forth. Okay, and there's our top 10 list that I posted to LinkedIn, and then I had someone that made a comment, I believe restoration of supplier confidence in buyers is potentially the biggest challenge. I didn't know that. Is this the 11th? Or maybe this suggestion can replace one of my 10. In other words, there's learning going on here while we're in social media. So LinkedIn is very powerful in that because you actually get to interact with other thought leaders in your specific niche. And this guy here used to be a supply chain leader in Salisbury, which is a major retail distribution chain in the UK. All right. And then remember, that was the jab, 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 right? So what happens in boxing? You need to take your opponent down. You need to do the, but you'll look at me in a mirror. So there's my right hook there. Okay. So notice you go in for the ask. One is maybe, can I discuss or pick your brains over coffee, which I've done that many, many times with a partner at KPMG. Can I interview you about our fintech unit? And I've done that several times with Professor Douglas Arner of Hong Kong U. And we even got him to visit Monash in January this year. Number 3, can you present at our retreat? And I got that for Paula Schultz, who came to our retreat in 2018 and gave one of the first expert presentations in the area of fintech that helped develop the development of our fintech unit in our department. And then, you know, and finally, can I have access to your data? Like, that's the ultimate ask, right? More about that as we get near the end. All right, let's go to number 3, media interviews. It's never been more easy. Why? Because ultimately people contact you, they DM you, they email you, they don't necessarily knock on your door. So you've got time to react. You've got time to get back to them and ask them, oh, what would you like to interview me about? What are your questions? They'll send you the questions. You'll know everything about what they're going to ask you before you start the interview. So then you spend a day, half a day, listing out, maybe there's 4 or 5 questions. You make one slide for each question and you put an answer under that slide. Then what do you do next? You then make a video of you going through those slides where you read out the question and then you answer that question, that slide. Suddenly you have created social media content associated with a media that you haven't even given. And then the media interview happens the next day or the day after. And then you're even more prepared for the media interview. And if it's through Zoom, great, because you can look at the camera and behind you, you've got the screen that's showing the answers on the PowerPoint slides in front of you. Media interviews are so much easier now that we're doing things through Zoom and online. And like the one at the bottom right-hand side, sourcing products, electronic products from China. I was asked to do a media interview last Monday. They said, oh, can you do Thursday? I said, okay, last Thursday. I said, and then suddenly on Wednesday, oh, sorry, we cannot do it on Thursday. Can you move it to Friday? Okay, can you move it to Friday? Let's do it at 11 a.m. in the morning. At 10 a.m. in the morning, I actually did my own video rehearsal of that media interview. You know, went for about 20-25 minutes, and I was ready for the 11 a.m. Media interview. I just went through the PowerPoint slides again and just dressed it up a little bit more. So there's so many things that you can do for media interviews these days. Now let's get to the last part, and that is integrating, getting back to what is it about. And I really believe that ultimately in this day and age, with the students at half our age, 1/3 my age, they need to see you as an authority figure in order for you to get their attention, getting their attention, you know, getting their attention from this little brick that has a battery and an electronics that's connected to more things that you or I will ever know. You know, Google anything these days, all right? So how can you say that you know more than the students when they've got this smartphone in front of them? This is where, from teaching point of view, number one, get guest speakers and reach out to thought leaders to join your class. Do Zoom interview for your class. Now you can, obviously we have guest presenters coming into the lecture all the time. And this year we've had people come in and do Zoom. But also what you can do is actually do a pre-class Zoom interview with that thought leader. And how is that different? Well, it makes a big difference, because what happens is that students see you alongside that thought leader. Students see you questioning that thought leader. That thought leader is of authority. Then you, the academic, asking the questions must also be of an authority. It's amazing what psychology happens when students see you in a video recording where you are actually questioning an authority figure. It's so much different from having the authority figures come in and present to the students, and you're nowhere to be seen. Like, you're just another pretty face in the massive faces in Zoom. And it's not like you are directing that guest presentation. So I strongly encourage my staff at ECRs to try and reach out and do a Zoom interview with authority figure in accounting, a Big Four accounting partner, or if not that, maybe a accounting graduate or a finance graduate who is 2 or 3 years out. You interview them to get their sense of, okay, what was it like 2 or 3 years out. And then you use that video to give to students to show them the importance of different units that they are studying in their third year of their accounting or finance. That's in our example of our department, but you can apply that to any discipline out there. So this is a different way of thinking about how we're using Zoom, but the whole idea is to get into the student's mind that you are also an authority in that information warfare that is going out there, in terms of you trying to get the students to pay attention to what you are teaching them. Other than, you know, we're trying to get away from influencing them just with exams and assessment like that. All right, we're trying to think in terms of getting them to think of you as an authority, and they want to hear what you have to say. What are your thoughts on this matter? Oh, the textbook says this. Well, what do you think, Dr. O'Connor? Okay, and you know, there's been many times I've thrown a textbook away saying, well, you know, I don't like pages 2, 3, and 4 in this chapter. It doesn't make sense to me. And by the way, I'm not going to assess you on that part, but this is what you need to know about that chapter. Ah, wow. Suddenly you are rising above the textbook, and the textbook doesn't become that brick, that authority in between you and the students. So there's many different ways you can think about how you can develop an authority, and you're reaching out to industry engagement can do that. Finally, we need to think about research. Now, ultimately, data, we love data, data is king. Ultimately, well, in my discipline, accounting and finance, people rely a lot on databases, but that is very competitive. And, you know, this is my view. It's not the view of everyone, including maybe some of my colleagues. I don't mind disagreement. But if you're relying on financial market data, you want to have sustainable research agenda with pubs in the A++ journals. I'm not just talking about the A journals here. Then you need to collaborate with a senior professor who actively publishes in Financial Times 50 or UT Dallas listed journals. Your competition is thousands of Chinese, Russian, and other developing nation students who are running data 24/7. How can you compete with them? Your data is not unique to your project. Everyone else has got access to the data. Anyone can overtake your project anytime your idea gets out. That's why I've always focused on trying to get access to private data, proprietary data, and try to be unique out there. And that's where industry engagement can help again, okay? But this takes time to develop. So for example, I'll just give you some examples. In 2002, I worked with Johnny Deng, a CFO of a Chinese firm in Wuhan, very famous these days. We ended up publishing that paper in Abacus, so that's like an A journal, it's not A++, in 2015. That was 13 years later. It took time. 2009, Annie Wu, professor in a university in Taiwan, her students are CFO, excuse me, of HTC. And so we're still revising that working paper from HTC proprietary data today, 10 years later. Mike Bellamy, passage maker, I met through Global Sources, and we're currently revising working paper on his supplier blacklist data today. So I got access to that data because I knew Mike. You see, the relationships give you access to data. Here's another idea of getting access to data through industry. Work through your master's students or students that have graduated and now they're working in industry, and they may have moved up to a senior position, and you try and work with them or collaborate with them on a research project where they become the data access in the industry, in that company, for your research project. That's exactly what we did with HTC. The master student was CFO of HTC. Of course, I've had some failures. I've tried to negotiate with an audit services company in 2017, but 12 months later, he ended up leaving that firm, and so then things just broke off. I've met the founder of an audit services company in 2015, and we're negotiating data access today as a result. A lot of these meetings have come through my interactions with industry, through global sources, through LinkedIn. Like, I meet people through global sources, but you actually keep the relationship warm through LinkedIn. You see comments that they make in LinkedIn and then you like it, or you may add to those comments and, expand a little bit more on what they're saying or your view, and you have a conversation with them in LinkedIn until the day that you do that right hook where you actually ask for some help in a specific way. So let me just summarize. What is your unique gift? What is it? And it's got to be very, very focused. Just because you're an accountant, just because you're a finance professional, but what is unique about your knowledge that you can give to industry? And focus on that, especially when you're going into LinkedIn and setting up your account and developing your brand in LinkedIn. Social media takes time. Make it a habit. Media interviews, you need talking points, and it's so much easier these days because everything is done digitally, online, and there's lots of ways of preparing for that offline. Finally, 2 points. Being seen by students as a thought leader is an ultimate test of your authority, in my view. That's the ultimate test. But you need to be seen, and there's too many academics out there that are not being seen by students as a thought leader, even though they are publishing in top journals, even though they have a professor designation or associate professor designation, even though they have a PhD. Okay, it doesn't necessarily mean that students see them as a thought leader. But if you can get them to see you as a thought leader, then the sky's the limit in terms of having greater power over those students in terms of being an influential teacher. No matter how you teach, whether you do flipped classroom, blended learning, online learning, or in the class, all right? If they see you as an authority, then that makes all the difference. Finally, proprietary research data access, in some ways for me, is the icing on the cake when we talk about industry engagement. So let me just stop there, and happy to take questions and have further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Any questions from the floor?
So, Prof. Hello.
Hello, got you. Hi.
Yeah. So, what is the best advice? I've been using LinkedIn for the last. I was not very active, but started to be active. I have around 500, 600 followers. Most of them are my students. I think I posted 2 or 3 for the last 2 months, 2 or 3 good ones, and there was some reaction. But what is the best advice, for given that most of my, connections are the students, specifically Monash students. Yes, we have some people from the industry, whatever, but mostly I get 5, 6, 7, 10 sometimes, requests during a week or 2 weeks. I have already somewhere like 500 plus, maybe 1,000, I don't know. But we have just different audience here, and we need to address them. Should we address anything, or should we address something specific to our audience?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And actually, hats off to you that you have so many students following you. I don't think I have that many students following me. In some ways, in my early LinkedIn history, I focused a little bit more on developing relationships with people outside of academia. And that's something you can, so I guess my advice is 2-pronged. number one, continue what you're doing with the students, because I think that is an amazing thing. Because what you got to realize is in that 2 or 3 years' time, those students will be working in industry, and they are relationships that in some ways may turn to gold in 5 years' time. So that's a very point that we shouldn't lose sight of, that our students take major positions in the future in particular industry areas. So that's why, you know, continually to cultivate those relationships is very, very important. I would say at the same time, you could reach out or start to ask to be connected with people that you think that are close to you by association, like a finance association or a fintech association in terms of your research area, whether it's finance, or maybe it's associated geographically. So, you know, people in KL, because that's the network that you'd want to cultivate. So you think geographically, you think professionally, and reach out to them. That is, you actually, they may pop up, because sometimes LinkedIn says, oh, you may, because you know person A, B, and C, then you might know some of their connections. And so that may be an opportunity for you to reach out in just a slow, gradual way, like drip, 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 drip. You know, we're talking about a couple of reach outs every week to the connections of the people already in your LinkedIn. And so then you can start to grow the non-student side membership in your LinkedIn.
Thank you, Prof.
There's many more things to do. Like you think about, I would, you know, because I think we're in a great position as a teacher, because every week we are delivering content to students. So it doesn't take much to take a photo of one unit, one PowerPoint slide that summarizes something. You put it in the LinkedIn, just say, oh, you know, just so happy to share on this area, and it's important because of 1, 2, and 3. And then suddenly there's a PowerPoint slide there, boom, bang. And so over time, if you do that once a week, all right, so that's 12 times for the semester for 12 different topic areas, you will start to get more granularity. You'll start to get more traction in terms of people reacting to you. And you're already doing it in the classroom, so it's just a matter of taking a photo of your PowerPoint slide and posting it into LinkedIn.
Thank you, Prof.
Yeah, just do it gradually. Don't spend an hour on it every day. This is something where 15, 20 minutes max a day, in and then out, in and then out. And then, you know, that's your, and it's kind of, it's like a farm. You got to water it and till, you know, put out the weeds and allow the plants to grow slowly, you know. Sorry for the funny analogy there.
Yeah, the other question, Prof, if there is no other question, I mean, just one more question and then I leave it. Do you accept any request, or you have to check the person who wants to connect?
Often I check their byline, I find out what industry they're in, and if an industry closely connected to mine, I do accept them. I'm quite open to accepting requests for connection. And
so, but there is some that ignores, you ignore, right?
Generally, the ones I ignore are the ones that do not look like people. They may be an Autobot, or they may be a company, or something like that. Yeah, I think, you know, generally, you know, there's different levels of connections. Yes, there's very superficial connections that you make, you know, in that process, but over time, what is important is the focus of the content that you are posting to LinkedIn over time. And then that starts to show the area of authority you have, and your followers or the people that like what you're doing or comment and you interact with, they start to rise above that larger group of connections that you have. So, you know, maybe you got a couple of thousand or 2,000 or 3,000, it just gets larger and larger and larger. And you may not know all of them because they are connections of other connections. But what's important is you just keep on focusing on gradually just posting, oh, you know, this is an important area of finance that we talked about this week, and it's important because of 1, 2, and 3, and you just post that, bang, that's it. And you just let those thousands of connections, maybe you don't know all of them, that they're interested in that, they will rise to the level of wanting to interact with you, either through likes or comments, or they might even DM you, that is, direct message you.
Thank you, Adi.
Any other questions? Or any feedback anybody would like to share?
Jason's there.
Nah, nothing much except that I just came just to know what your process was, and I think we are all at various stages in careers where we try to seek the engagement. And of course, my takeaway point is, you know, what area would you want to be the subject expert in? So yeah, but I think overall, I think it was a good presentation and very practical steps as well. So yeah, but as I said, I think it takes 2 hands to clap. At least as far as I, you know, in terms of my experience, you know, I've had more failures than successes. So,
Yeah.
You know, some people will reciprocate and some people will just totally waste your time, even though they had initially opened the door to you. So
Yeah.
So I just had the door shut on me like 2 Fridays ago. I was like,
Wow.
which is fine.
A data door, Jason.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ouch. Yeah. That's
okay. But at least I know where they stand. So and I realized, and you know, I asked them a few questions, and they have never worked with any universities before. So I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Point noted.
Well, I would find out if there's any Monash alumni working for that company.
Yeah, perhaps.
And then you go in, you know, you go in the back door, you see.
I prefer, I prefer not to emulate our government's.
No, not in that way. Or no, another way. Or just okay. This is a company, right? Let's just take this for an example. It's a company. You want to get access to data. Okay, then you find out, oh, who's the CFO? Ah, okay. Oh, the CFO. Oh, they just did an MBA at a particular university. Ah, okay. Let's find out if I know anyone at that university that taught in the MBA, and oh, maybe I can get them to collaborate with me on this project. Then you talk to them and say, oh, by the way, for this project to go forward, we need data from one of your students in the MBA, and that student really looks up to you. And so, you know, you're connecting with connecting, you see. And so they're not giving the data. They're not giving the data to you. They're sharing the data with that teacher that they saw so much as having authority in that MBA that they took. You just become a partner with that teacher.
That's a very good point. Very good point.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Data, the holy grail. Yes.
Yes.
Well, thanks everyone. If no other questions, I appreciate that, and for not asking questions while I was presenting. You get through it even faster. But anyway.
All right. So thank you, Prof, for today's presentation. We will have the recording saved in our school research office events folder if anybody would like to go through it again if you missed out on anything. So yeah, thanks Prof, and thank you everybody for joining today's session.
Thank
Oh,
you.
my
All
pleasure.
right,
Thank
see
you.
you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.